I want my main thing to be to create a business that's a machine that can create predictable revenue. And then I want to take the revenue from that machine and put that money into passive investments that make me more money. So that way I have
Right.
time freedom for my business and the profits for my business is creating more revenue.
Hey guys, I wanted to jump in here really quick to give you a free gift for listening to the Lucky Titan podcast. This is going to be something that is truly going to revolutionize your business. Cannot wait for you to see it. Check this out.
Are you ready to share your message with the world? Introducing PitchDB, the all-in-one platform revolutionizing the way speakers connect with podcasts, conferences, and media outlets. With access to over 3 million platforms, finding your perfect speaking opportunity has never been easier. Our AI integrations create personalized bios and pitches, setting you apart from the crowd. Join the movement of speakers taking the world stage today. Join now at pitchdb.com.
Wasn't that awesome? I am so excited about PitchDB, and thank you, PitchDB, for giving us the free 1-month trial to anybody who's a listener of the Lucky Titan podcast. So guys, if you want to claim this, all you have to do is click the link somewhere here in the description or head to pantheon.fm/pitch. Once again, guys, that's pantheon.fm/pitch. Cannot wait to see you guys there. So now let's hop into the episode. What's up, guys? Welcome back. Very excited about today's guest. Mike and I, we spent a while trying to get this interview on the book, so I'm glad we actually made it happen. It's 100% my fault. Most of you know that listening to the show. I'm pretty bad at scheduling. That's why I need to hire Mike. So we're going to deep dive into this today. Mike Abramowitz, which I didn't butcher the name, right? We got it?
That's perfect.
Oh, awesome.
Perfect.
Okay. So Mike, I've known as Mike A for a while because he's been on my calendar and I have not been able to pronounce his name. So I'm glad he told me that beforehand. But Mike is the man when it comes to sourcing your life. And Mike, to kind of kick this one off, I have a question for you. And I'm going to explain this with a story myself. So I have a buddy, Chris Williams is his name. Do you know Chris? Do you remember
I don't know Chris. No.
Coach Nation. He's awesome. Great guy. But anyways, Chris and I have kind of grown up in business together for the last 5 years. And I was recognizing something the other day when I was talking to him is that so we end up meeting up, we end up meeting like every quarter, he and I in person. And every quarter he's telling me, hey, I just saved another hour a week. Like he shaved off another hour of work a week. And he is a 4-hour work week evangelist, PS, which I see that book on your shelf. So I'm going to ask questions on that. But every single week or every single quarter, he's like, shave another hour off. And then I'm always like, oh yeah, like we like level up our revenue. And that's like what we've been doing. And then I had a realization that I'm like, he is doing better than me on all accounts because he's making either the same amount, maybe a little bit less than me, but literally he's doing his work right now in 8 hours a week. And his goal is 4, right? He's trying to live the 4-hour work week. And he's been doing this last 5 years. It's just been every quarter, another hour, another 2 hours. So I'm curious with you because you seem to have a very similar mentality and mindset to it. So I want to ask you, did that come to you from the 4-hour work week, or was there something else that kind of drove you and motivated you to start cutting down your hours?
Great question. I read the 4-hour work week not that long ago. I loved it. I devoured it. So the short of it is my dad worked 6 days a week in a plumbing business and missed a lot of my basketball games growing up. So when I left New Jersey college, I was like, I'm going to work my tail off all through my 20s. I'm going to retire at 40. I'm going to set myself up to have all this time freedom. So that way I could be more present as a family man. So that was like the intent. And so I grinded all through my adolescence and college, and I sold Cutco kitchen knives through college, made my way through school. And then I bought a house when I was 20 and my mom passed when I was 20. And I took her life insurance money, invested in a second property at 21. And at 22, I had my third rental property. So when I graduated college, I had 3 rental properties, paid my way through school. And then 2008 hit and the market collapsed. So I lost the properties. I was $130,000 in debt, 400 credit score, near bankrupt. And from that place, now, how the hell am I going to climb out of this hole? So the foundation was then laid of me grinding and working at my $50,000 to $75,000 a year in direct sales as a business owner inside Cutco as a Cutco manager in direct sales, grinding just to make my money back. But my 7-year relationship ended. I had unhealthy eating habits. I had no time for fun or friends or family. So eventually I went to a Tony Robbins event. I'm a big Tony Robbins guy, walked across fire and learned
He's
my
awesome.
message. And that was kind of the birthplace of saying, all right, I could do some things different. So that was the birthplace of 9 books and launched a nonprofit to feed the homeless. And I was still spread thin. I was still working all the time, except now writing books and speaking and all these things with running my direct sales business. Something had to change. I met my now wife. We started dating 2014. I was like, I promise I'll make some changes. 2016, hired a business coach. That business coach is really where everything started changing because he helped scale a company in India from 6 million to 30 million, had 1,400 people underneath him. He came back to the States and started teaching small business owners how to corporatize their small business. I was one of his clients and students. And that's really the origin story of like,
Jeez.
how do I buy back my time? So I hired him and then we put in these systems in place. And then obviously we could get into the success of what that created for me since 2016. But that's really where it came from. It came from pain. It came from desperation. It came from a loss. That's the long answer to the short question though.
Well, it's a great answer. And I want to take you back to 2008 though for a second, because I'm always curious when people talk about like losing it all, right? Because I've had the same thing twice, right? Where it completely lost everything, and back to like, oh, I can't even pay my rent, can't pay my, can't buy groceries for myself, right? And after having a really, really successful period, and I'm kind of curious, like, you talked about like losing those homes and stuff. Like, did you have to foreclose on the properties and everything, or what did that look like for you?
Oh yeah, I had deficiency judgments. One I abandoned completely, and then one had to do the foreclosure, and then one I just pretty much sold it, gave it away as a loss, pretty much to a
Oh,
family
wow.
member. So it was yeah, painful, super painful, but it was it was I was running a race that I didn't know how to run. All I did was I read Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was in my leadership training with Cutco and Vector marketing. And I was like, I'm riding around my 91 Mitsubishi Eclipse. And I was like, I could use a new car. And I was like, let me buy an asset instead of a liability. So I bought my first house. And then that kind of where the ripple came from. It's like, I'm going to get ahead. And this like trying to get ahead type of mentality, circumstances kind of said otherwise. But what's interesting is the last 10 years, I'm 38, I'll be 39 this June. That this last 10 years have been so transformative to go from this valley to now being an accredited investor and being able to teach from those lessons has been
Right.
really rewarding for me. And now having 2 kids and married and just be able to work from home and have a lot of time freedom, which is I know we'll dig into. It makes me appreciate and empathize with my fellow business owners and entrepreneurs, brothers and sisters on this journey that says, I've been there, but man, with what I know now, it didn't have to be that way. It didn't have to be
Oh
that way.
man, hey,
So
it's so funny, and this is, I love that you use the word empathize, because I found for myself, I work with a lot of younger entrepreneurs, like younger as far as it's a newer business for them, right? And we found that a lot of them feel like, oh, you lost everything, but I'm starting with nothing. And I'm like, I think there's a big difference. I think there's a really big difference from that, because, and it's funny that you mentioned this, because going back to Chris Williams' story, he had the same experience. I had the same experience. My buddy Hayden, he just sent me a voice message the other day, completely lost everything in the last 2 months. This guy's been doing tens of millions of dollars, really successful company, and to zero again. And it's just so interesting because, like you said, like you just don't get it till you've done it, and like been at that high point when people are starting to tell you, you're doing really well, you're doing awesome. And then all of a sudden you're having to tell them, oh, I had to foreclose on those properties I owned, right? I had to go get a job. I had to, whatever it was. But it's funny because that is literally the catalyst every time for starting what you're actually meant to do. And so it's cool because I can even just see the passion in you when you talk about, oh yeah, I've written 9 books, become an accredited investor, all those things, because it was 9 books, right?
yeah,
I got
correct.
that right. Okay.
Yeah.
But you did all that because you were able to actually have lost everything. You might still be in real estate at this point if it hadn't have gone differently, right? Like that might have been your main, I'm sure you were still in real estate, but that might have been your main gig. You might have been a real estate agent. We don't know.
Mhm. Here's what's fascinating is that the whole concept of my mess is my message. I took the valleys of my 20s and figured out what that message was. And I spent 300 hours of just speaking to the schools in Pinellas County, Florida, where I was living. And it was just speaking to the students to craft that message. And that's what launched that first book, because I figured out like, this is the thing. It's like goal setting and vision casting. But then I'm like, gosh, this is adding a lot of value to the marketplace, but it's a hard type of like grind to like get these speaking gigs and have this curriculum sold to the schools. So it was still exchanging time for money. And so when I hired that business coach and he said, "What do you want your main thing to be?" I said, "I want my main thing to be to create a business that's a machine that can create predictable revenue. And then I want to take the revenue from that machine and put that money into passive investments that make me more money. So that way I have
Right.
time freedom for my business, and the profits for my business is creating more revenue that's creating more passive. So I can create time freedom and financial freedom. So therefore I can have location freedom and experience the 3X freedoms that I wanted." So it's like, that's what I want to create. And I don't care how we do it. So we decided on building systems in my direct sales business, which is taboo. I mean, being in a recruiting company, like in sales, I was the bottleneck. My clients had 1,000 people bought Cutco from me. They all had my cell phone number. I had these new
Wow.
recruits trying to get a job had my cell phone number. And then I've trained 5,000 people how to sell. They all had my cell phone number. So it's like being the one point of contact for 3 different parties. How the hell am I going to escape being needed so much? And that's what we built between offshore virtual assistants and automation and tech solutions and upgraded CRMs and like all these different solutions we figured out. This is what we put in place. And then COVID hit 2020. It was like, oh shoot, let's test it out. Here we go. Doing like
Right.
virtual meetings. I wanted to work from home when I got married in 2017. So I was like, I want to work from home. So all that stuff, the virtual stuff that we set up 2016, 17, 18, 19, 2020, boom, we provided over 1,000 jobs. We did over $2.5
Wow.
million in sales that year. I took an 18-day road trip with my wife and we still did $100,000 sales weeks, each of those weeks. Absolutely crushed it. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And then there was another storm that came. We could talk about that storm in just a moment, but winter season is unpredictable. We don't necessarily
Yeah.
know when it's going to come, but it's best to work and build out the infrastructures when you can, because the unpredictable season sometimes follows when we're least expecting it.
Oh yeah. It kind of has to, right?
Yeah,
But let's address something here really quick, right? You
sure.
talk about you mentioned how you had I'm not going to get exact numbers right here, but 1,000 clients. You had 5,000 sales reps, like all these people who had your personal number were connected with you. Let's address something, right? Is that as entrepreneurs, the desire to feel needed is immense. I mean, you talk to any entrepreneur and they're like, that makes you feel successful. But then after all the conversations are done and you're going home, you're going, I am so burnt out. I can't be the battery for 6,000 people. That makes me want to throw up now hearing that, truthfully, because even just having, our hundreds of clients that we had are, I think the highest point we had 60 some odd employees, contractors. Anyways, all of them coming through me, I was ready to die. It was killing me. And so looking at what you're saying, and going, like, I think we should address that for a lot of you, that's probably providing significance to you right now, but there's a better way to do it where you can still receive that significance, but not be that, like you said, the bottleneck, which I think becomes the turning point in the conversation here. Because let's actually talk tactical here when it comes to actually delegating our time. And I'm going to you have a whole process around this, so I don't want to like interrupt your flow, but I have a lot of questions for you. And I think you're probably just going to answer them by giving us the 6-step process. So are you willing to kind of
Sure.
take the floor here?
Yeah, absolutely. The time rich 6, if anybody wanted to just document them, I'll just go through them real quick. Time rich 6, number 1 is boundaries. Number 2 is communication guidelines. I'll go through them quick and then I'll do a little bit in each of them. So boundaries, communication guidelines, systems, playbooks, team, and then tech. So those are the 6 like pillars of becoming time rich. And I put these in place, not necessarily knowing what that framework was, but the boundaries, which is number 1, which is what are my priorities? What is most important to me that I need to protect, and what is considered out of bounds? So initially I was 24/7. Anyone could get in touch with me. And eventually it was like, I want to have some time blocked off. So it's like, how can I have a half a day where no one gets in touch with me? It started there. And that was a Monday, like morning into afternoon. How could I have that time protected? So, and then it went from a full Monday, and then it was like all my mornings, and then it was all my evenings, and then it was all my weekends, right? So it was a progression there. But what did I want to make sure that was non-negotiable for me? Right now, today, my schedule is 9 to 4, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 9 to 2 on Friday. Those are my business hours. Everything outside of that is Saturdays. My wife gets a personal day. Mondays, I get a personal day. Sundays, family day. Evenings are with the family. Mornings are for myself. And it's like, now we have a structure. I have boundaries for where I'm at in my life. Last year, 2023, I had 9 full weeks off. Why? Because I created boundaries around it. So boundaries is really important. You got to know what those priorities are and then protect them. When I'm working on the business versus working in the business, that leads into number two, which is communication guidelines. How do I want people to get my attention? What deems an email versus a text message versus a voice memo versus a live call versus a Zoom meeting versus an in-person meeting? Like, what are the rules of engagement? So I had to get really clear. I was invited to do these events and speaking and all this. It's like, I don't really want to do that stuff. Like, what is going to, how do I want to communicate? How do I want people to communicate with me? If someone called me on my personal day, I just stopped answering the phone. What message does that send? I'm not available. Even though I saw it ringing, every time I picked up the phone and I said yes to that person, I was saying no to my boundaries. I was saying no to my priorities. So I said, I'm going to stop answering the phone. Did I lose some business from it? Probably in that moment, but I was also training those people in my life and also training my unconscious of what my priorities are. If I say one thing and do something else, I'm going to be incongruent and inconsistent. And then I'm always going to be in this rat race. So
Can I
communication
ask
guidelines are really
two
important.
questions here really quick? Sorry to
For
interrupt
sure.
you.
Yeah.
With boundaries, do you let certain clients or people in your life outside of those boundaries? Or are you like, there's literally not a single human on this planet that gets me on my personal day?
It depends, it depends because here's like, I just had a conversation with one of our new clients. Her name is Tanya. She's in the real estate space. She's doing, 20 to 40 homes a year. She's doing really well. She wants to create systems in her business. And I said, my hours of operation are this. You send me a Slack message. That's how I want to communicate. I'll be in front of my computer. I don't have any apps on my cell phone. So if you send me a Slack, I'm not going to see it. I don't have any apps, but if you send me a Slack message when I'm in my office hours, boom, I will be here. However, if anything is urgent for something outside of office hours, you can send me an email and my VA will get in touch with you. If it's like my VA can't help, then you or my VA can send me a text message. No problem. And if I'm available, I'll respond to you. That is the pre-frame that I say. And understands. I said, the reason why that's important to me is because I'm a father, I'm a husband first, and then a business person second. I want to be present with whoever I'm in front of. So when I'm in my business hours, I'm present for you. And when I'm not in business hours, I'm present with someone, with my family or myself. And I just try to, be where I'm at. So is that cool? Do you have any questions on that? Is
No,
that okay?
That's awesome. I love that.
And she's like, of course. She's like, I wish I could do that with my clients. I said, well, that's why you hired me. So we're going to create those boundaries for you of what your version of this is. But to your point, it needs to be explicit. And I think too many people are willing to kind of bend on that, which I can bend. I am telling them I will, and I can, but this is the preference in the order of operations before I'm going to bend for you. I'd like for you to go through these other communication guidelines before you get to me real time.
See, that's actually a super awesome response because I have very rigid boundaries with my time. Like that's something I have established. I work 30-hour weeks. That's kind of been my thing. I'd love to cut that down to 20, but that's really kind of my next big step is 20-hour weeks. But I found that I always allow, there's like 3 to 5 people who I just give unlimited access to me. But I've noticed recently, because it's just coming to me, like, that's why that's working, is I've been telling them, hey, I'm really trying to cut down my work hours. So like, I'd prefer if we could have our meetings during these times, but just know you can have me during these other times. But I'm almost wondering if I say, would it be okay if we kept them within that boundary? Right. Because I don't think there's anything wrong with asking people that.
No, they respect it more, and it makes me even more valuable. And especially if you have a virtual assistant that manages my inboxes for me.
Right.
My VA knows. It's like, if someone emails, respond if you know how to, but if not, then just say, I got this before Mike. I'll make sure I let Mike know. but we saw this, and these are his office hours. He'll get back to you with a response, during those office hours. So that way,
So
the client or the prospect feels like, okay, I got my response in a timely manner, and then during the next business hour, I go to my Slack and I see a screenshot of the email that says, "Hey, this needs your attention." And then I go to Slack. I'm not going to my email. I go to my Slack and say, "This is how I want you to respond." So therefore, I don't have to actually go into my inbox. I don't have to go into my social media. So there's a team managing. So like someone sends me a message on Facebook. I don't have to go into Facebook to get distracted by the platform. I just go to my Slack and I see the screenshot of the conversation. Here's how I want you to respond, because the distraction and reactions that happen in the inboxes and on those platforms for me would be a time killer. I would end up being there scrolling and getting unplugged with all this other stuff for,
mm,
10 minutes here, 15 minutes there, 20 minutes there. That adds up to 3 to 5 hours a week. I didn't want to lose that time anymore. So that's why these guidelines were really important for me. And that's what I teach as well.
yeah, that is awesome. And with your guidelines, because this was actually really insightful to me, is like what actually deems it being an email, a message, a voice memo? Like, what are your guidelines? Just out of curiosity.
So for me, I have about 25 different
Wow.
Calendly events. So these Calendly events are from anywhere from like, if it's a personal catch up call, if it's a human, like a front row dad, I'm in front row dads, and these are like my brothers. If they want to get my attention anytime, here's a Calendly link, 15 to 20 minutes, book that. Everything else, if you're a prospect, you get this link. If you want to book me on a podcast, it's this link. If you want to come on our podcast, it's this link. Like, so my team knows these are like all of the links for all the situations. And then I can actually pull it up, but I have all the communication guidelines. If it's a request for a resource, email, and my VA will get you that resource. If my internal team needs access to something like billing information or personal information, then they'll use that Calendly link to book a 15-minute slot where I could just be there to give them access and give them password usage or whatever they need. And they'll just book that link and just show up on my schedule. If it's anything that's urgent, like needs my attention right now, that's where they can send me a text message to my iPhone. But if they just have a question or something, they could send a text message to our CRM to go high level, which is the cloud phone number. So that way
Yeah.
someone on my team can respond to that. So voice memo, if it's coaching. So if you need actual insights and you want to like have a conversation with me that's just not real time, voice memo is the best way to do that. So I can listen to your voice memo and then Slack transcribes it. And then I'll respond with a voice memo and then Slack transcribes it. So it's really nice in that regard. These are just a couple of examples without looking at it, but I have this all documented as these are my communication guidelines, how to communicate with Mike. These are my preferences.
That's really cool, actually. I'd love to like pick that could be a whole episode in itself, like understanding what those are. And I'm sure you've got this as like a giveaway or something you can include in your program, but just having those guidelines would be so insightful. Cause I once had a guy give me, it was basically like a spectrum of what a virtual assistant can do. And it was like, I think it was like 80 different things. They were all within different categories. So it's kind of like I don't know if it's called a Gantt chart. I can't remember what it's called. There's like a pie chart with multiple tiers. Anyways, long story short, is it was about out of the 80 things, there were probably 60 of those I had never even considered having a
Mhm.
virtual assistant do. And I went, wow, that was so intriguing to me of going, oh, I could literally source all of these to somebody, train them up on it and just let them run with it. So I love that, which is probably going into your third step, which is systems, right? So I'll let you
Yeah.
keep running with it. Thank you for answering
So
my questions.
yeah, the systems, what is a system? The way we define it is a series of processes, policies, and technologies that aid in the goal of the business. So processes, policies, technologies that aid in the goal of the business. So a process is a series of if-then statements. So what I would recommend and what I did for me is thinking about the business as four pillars. The pillars are attract, convert, onboard, retain. So, and that's for the client journey and also the talent journey. We attract clients and talent. That's like lead gen. We convert clients and talents. It's interviews or sales conversations. There's onboarding for both. And then retain, which is retaining our clients with lifetime value and referrals, and retaining our talent with retention of our client or retention of our talents to minimize turnover, meeting cadence, and stuff like that. So all of those four pillars for each of those eight essentially have if-thens. All of those if-thens need, in my opinion, to be reviewed. All of the different exchanges, kind of like Michael Gerber's E-Myth, just questioning every part of that as a flow chart is the processes. The policies are like the playbooks. That's the documentation. That's why they kind of go play pair and pair, because number four is playbooks, which is the documentation of those processes. So how do we want to document them? What are the SOPs, the standard operating procedures? What are the playbooks? How is it? What are the resources that go behind each of those if thens? Think about like a football team. Like you have a playbook, you have a play you have to run, but you don't decide on the fly, like, hey, this is the play we're going to call today and just go run and try to get open. It's premeditated. That's what those systems and playbooks are designed to do. And then the team and the tech, the team is who's going to be running those plays, right? So now that we have the infrastructure, too many people try to find a who solution before they put a process solution in place, which is fine. But what has served me is coming up with the system and the playbooks and then install the who's. Trying to do them all at the same time is one way of doing it as well. But ideally, we build this infrastructure and then put the who's in place. So the team is who are the who's that are going to be executing those plays and installed into the system. I love Dan Martell. His book is called Buy Back Your Time. It's a fantastic resource for anyone. He calls it the replacement ladder of where to install who's first to buy back your time. So first is administrative, then it's marketing or client fulfillment. Those two interchange for me, then sales, and then leadership. So that's his replacement ladder. So first tier, offload all the administrative, inbox management, calendar management, outbound, any outreach, any type of video editing, podcast production. I put that into administrative. Anything that's like, what else do they do for me? Data entry, CRM management, any of that stuff is administrative. And the administrative could support marketing. It could support sales. It could support client fulfillment, but get the admin done first. And that's why what I'm doing right now is giving away free delegation planning sessions for a 90-day delegation planning session to figure out what are all the administrative that a business owner can offload. Let's pick that apart and figure out what are those low value activities that we can offload to a team or to a tech to buy back that time. Because that bottom 20%, that might be 10 or 12 hours a week, 15 hours a week, sometimes as high as 30 or 40 hours a week that some business owners are spending on administrative. It's just wild to think about. And it's not even a revenue generating activity, but it's stuff that has to get done. So we try to buy back our time from that. So that's the team. And then the tech, and by the way, under team is there's experts, been there, done that. And then there's followers, which are like virtual assistants. Or not, I wouldn't say virtual assistants, but like administrative assistants. So both could be virtual, but been there, done that are experts. You're paying a premium for experts. And then there are followers, which are a little bit more on the below the $25 an hour mark. Experts are probably upwards of $75+ an hour or more, just as a framework there for the who's. Tech is what is the tech solution that we're going to use? What are the tools like a CRM? Or a learning management software like a Kajabi or Thinkific or Teachable, or like a project management software like a ClickUp, like a CRM, like a Go High Level Active Campaign. Like these are the tools, and AI would fall under the tech. So Chat GPT and Opus Clips, any of these types of AI tools that make life easier for you, I would put that into tech. Tech doesn't replace the team. Tech supports the team. So the team paired with tech is really important. That's why AI powered delegation is really the way to go. AI powered delegation. So delegation who's that understand how to use AI so they could be effective and efficient has been an absolute game changer for me and also for the individuals that we serve in our community. So that's the Time Rich 6: boundaries, communication guidelines, systems, playbooks, team, and tech. And by putting all of that in place for me, Josh, the short of the story, because I don't want to go into too much of the weeds, but December 31st, 2020, New Year's Eve was when my son was born at 26 weeks. He was weighing 1 pound, 4 ounces. And because I put all of this stuff into place for my direct sales business, I didn't know how long we were going to be in the hospital with him, but my wife I ended up being in the hospital with him for 254 days. So for 8.5 months, and my direct sales business ran without me during that time and still produced 6 figures in revenue and profits without me there. My wife became a full-time medical mom, leaving her corporate position, making 80 grand a year. I had to find a way to replace that while sustaining the results I was already having. That was the birthplace of what I'm doing right now. So September 10th, 2021, I called my business coach and I said, do you think we could teach people how to do this, to buy back time like I just did? He said, let's find out. That was the birthplace of Better Than Rich. We've now partnered up. We've served hundreds of other business owners and entrepreneurs to help them build systems and install AI powered delegation into their businesses so they can buy back their time to what matters most to them. Maybe it's not to be in the hospital for 8.5 months, but just to be able to be present for their kids' sporting event or go on that family vacation and not be attached to their cell phone. That's what's important to me right now. And that's essentially what we're doing for business owners and my fellow brothers and sisters in the entrepreneur arena. So that's the timer at 6. I
Crazy.
know it's a lot.
Guys.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm over here writing notes. I'm going to hold myself accountable here on the show. I'm going to make a LinkedIn post about how I'm going to use this. So awesome stuff, man. I love it. It's just so funny to me that for most people, we think that this is unattainable, but it's funny when you really start to do it, you start to realize, wow, I could get way more done in way less time if I was just a lot more strategic about my actions. And I'm going to make one note here, because there's like a million thoughts I've had on all these 6 different guidelines, but I really love that you talk about that tech doesn't replace the team, it supports them. Because what's so interesting is I've watched with a lot of entrepreneurs and myself that a lot of times we buy these software tools thinking they're going to save our skin, right? Oh, this is going to solve all these problems, but it ends up creating more simply because we don't have a team for it yet, right? And so like we as the entrepreneur end up getting sucked into the build of the software that should even be where we're at, right? So that's awesome. I'm assuming that would be a leadership role, right? Their leadership role is to actually figure out tools and SOPs and everything else so it can scale, right?
So it's interesting because we ended up finding a who to be in charge of technology for our company because I wanted to be in focus on brand development and sales, and my business partner is in charge of operations and fulfillment. And it's like the two of us as founders of the company, we're just like, we got to find someone else. So we found a who. So that would be like that been there, done that can be in charge of knowing what the best AIs are out there and the tech solutions that we should use and whatnot. So it could get muddled very quickly because things are evolving so fast with AI in the technology industry that as a business owner, if we're trying to chase the shiny objects and just trying to find that next best thing, it's going to be a distraction. So that's why my counsel that I give myself and anyone I talk to is start with the systems and the playbooks, figure out what the process is, what is the optimal user experience, start there, and then say, cool, processes, policies, technologies, and the goal. Once I have those, then I put in the team and the tech solutions, because those are not that they don't matter, but that's the last one: policies, processes, and then team and technology, right? That would be my suggestion.
That is awesome. Well, I'm going to ask you this, and by the way, thank you for sharing such an intimate story about your son. I'm not going to lie, it freaks me out because I'm having my second son in a month. I'm like,
well, he's doing great now. You know, he's doing awesome. He's 3. He just started school. He was fully on a ventilator for 2 years and had his trach, and we became medical parents very quick. But now he's off the trach. He's off the ventilator. He still has his feeding tube, but you know, we're figuring that out, and he's awesome. We just had our daughter. She was born December 4th, so she's 3.5 months, and she's super healthy, fantastic, and doing awesome. So it is wild to think about what we have gone through. But now my wife is an advocate helping a lot of other medical parents, and she is a remarkable human, and I get a chance to, help other individuals as I'm able to help them too. But I wouldn't encourage people to go have a medically complex or fragile situation, but
no joke.
I do think it tests us in ways that sometimes we didn't even know what the human potential could offer us as parents until we were tested this way. So
yeah, serious amounts of pain, but growth as well. We have, my wife and I are one of our best friends as a couple. They've got a son that's the same way, and he wasn't born prematurely, but had horrible seizures, and it has a feeding tube and everything. And it's just been cool to watch them grow and become. I mean, it's helped them become more successful in every area of their life because they've had to learn how to be completely selfless. I think is one of the biggest growing things. Like, I mean, because at the end of the day, that child is completely dependent on you, and it's much harder. that even just having a regular child, but that like a child who just doesn't have health complications. But then, um, it's been funny to watch my friend is in his, cause he has a career, like he works a job, but his income has drastically improved since then. And that's just because I think he's learned how to optimize, like you said, the time and figure those things out. So it's just so cool to see that you guys have done that. So I want to ask just one final question before I wrap this up. And before I do so, guys, make sure you go check out betterthanrich.com/90-day plan. Is that the correct link?
That is true. Yeah.
Okay. So making sure, got to make sure I don't mess those up. But again, it's betterthanrich.com/90-day plan. Go check out what Mike's doing, guys. I mean, what an awesome system to be able to go implement in your life. And just imagine being able to buy back even 5 hours of your time a week, like what you could do with that. I mean, I know for myself, when I bought back my first 5 hours, I was able to actually get my health in check again, right? That was such a huge, and it's not a burden to try and fix my health because I've got the time to do it, right? And it didn't hurt my company at all. Not even for the first week. It actually improved it week 1. So Mike, I want to ask you though, just as a final note, like what's one thing they can take from these 6 different steps that they could go do today to go get a big win?
Big win. Figure out what your target dollar per hour is, starting number 1. So how much money do you want to make this year? Let's say you want to make $300,000. How many weeks do you want to work? And how many hours per week do you want to work? So just using that as quick math, you take 40 hours times, let's say 48 weeks. You want to take 4 weeks off for your family. That's 1,920 hours. So in exchange for 1,920 hours, you want to make, let's say 300K, that's $150 an hour. Just by knowing your time is worth $150 an hour, now you can audit the time and say, what are all the tasks that I'm doing? Or what are all the tasks that are not getting done that are underneath that amount, that if they were done, it would allow me to focus on the high value activities that are around this amount or more. Just doing that alone, I think could be revolutionary for you. So you can see, wow, I got to spend time on the systems. I got to spend time on the playbooks, and I got to offload and delegate to the team in the tech. Those revelations will allow you to create those boundaries and install those communication guidelines to protect your $150 an hour activities, as an example.